Alright, welcome to the channel everybody. My name is acelewy and let's get started into this video. So for this video here we're going to be talking about how to get the base numbers of your crit chance, penetration, resistance, and then crit resistance. The first thing we're going to showcase is resistance. It's the easiest one to check out. So you get your magical resistance, your physical resistance, right? You can just look right here. For all these it's the same. It all tells you that the resistance cap is at 50 and that 50% is 30,000. All you need to know from here is that if this is 33,000, that means that 5% of 50% of this rating will be 3,330. Right, so if you put on a defending staff, which I have one here that I can showcase to you, it's not gold, but you can see it right here, 3,000. When it's gold, it's going to be 3,276. That's a little bit underneath 5%, based off of what we just saw here in our advanced stats right then and there, because that's 5%, so that means that 1% of 3,000, well, 1% by this game's logic will then be 660. By the way, that's how much it will be. So with all that being said, and if you want to know how I got to 660, if 3,300 is 5%, times it by 2, you get 6,600 minus the 0, and you are sitting at 1%, because that was 10% when you put 5% plus 5%. So with that being said, that's how you get the number. It's 6,000, well, it's 660 for 1%. So now you kind of understand how armor works, so that when you're running certain sets and they're giving out armor, which let's see if I have a set here, I think I have like Pariah, right? You can see how much percentage in armor that you're actually getting. And you also see the difference between certain numbers. Like for instance, if someone tells you, hey, you have too little resistances, right? You're sitting at say 24k. You know, you need to get your resistance up to 27. They're telling you to get extra 5%, and that's not a lot, because when you know anything about resistances in the game and how mitigation works, that's so little armor that it really didn't matter. It really didn't. There's a lot of damage in this game nowadays. Getting the extra 3k does not save you from the giant hits. It doesn't. There's nothing in the game resistance-wise that will save you from giant hits nowadays. Especially when you consider that people have penetration. And how penetration works is it's basically just resistance but minusing it. So you're just cutting people's resistances away. So if you look at my stats right now, I have basically 7k physical pen. Same thing when it comes to physical resistance, it's at 12k, right? So if I just cut it in half right here, I'm gonna sit at a very, very small number of resistance, and it really does not matter at that point. When you're sitting underneath 10k resistance, when you include your own penetration, it doesn't matter. Once they get to that 10k mark, you're basically going to hit them very hard. It doesn't matter. You want to get them a little bit underneath it, alright. Once it's at that 7k, they're underneath 7k armor left with you, does not matter. And with that being said, resistance is the same thing as armor. Crit resistance does not follow the same thing. I'll talk about crit resistance later. Next thing we're going to talk about is crit chance. Super easy. If you know anything about light armor gives you crit chance. It actually gives you 1% per. How do we know this? It tells you the critical rating is 219. When you go and put on a light piece of armor, take it off, I'm at 36.2. Put it back on, I'm at 37.2. That's important to know, because 219 times 3 is going to get you 657. Why do I bring up that number? Well, when you go over to Twin Blade and Blunt, scroll down, daggers give you 657. Also, a lot of sets grant you 657. Let me see, like right here. Innate Axiom grants you 641. When this is gold, is 657. Same thing with Rallying Cry. Each of those things, when they're gold, is 657. Meaning that in total, by having both these gear sets on, I get a total of 9%. Now I don't, because I'm front bar and back bar my set. I'm front barring innate, I'm back barring rally, but still. It's important to know this, because now you know how much crit chance you're getting from your armor pieces, and you know how much you're getting from your light armor. Going a step further, 657 times 2 is 1,314. So instead of it being 3% that you're getting 6% from your crit chance. This is important to know because you have a skill all the way in your assassination skill line, grants you minor savagery. And minor savagery Any of the minors, how they operate in this game is the minors is just half of a major. So if 6% is minor savagery, that means that major savagery, if we follow that logic, is going to be 12%. And you may notice something if you put it into a calculator, that 1,314 times 2 is not the number right there. It's actually off by 1. Hey, I think they just messed up on this and never changed it. Or they deliberately left it at 2,629 just to mess with people. But when you go into the stats, when you take it on and off, it literally just removes 12%. So you can see right here I have 37%. When I take off the skill and make sure it's not on any of my other bars, I'll just put on mass hysteria. That doesn't grant me any crit chance. I lost 12%. Put it back on and I gain 12%. So that's how it operates. That is important to know. So now, say I wanted to get from 37% to 50% crit chance. I'm going to need roughly 12 to 13% crit chance. Well, I run an axe and a sword. I can just swap my axe and sword to daggers. That's going to give me 6%. So that's going to give me basically a minor savagery. Oh, on the topic of a minor savagery, what do I have as a Nightblade? Minor savagery when I deal crit damage. So I'm going to give myself that 12% crit chance. And if I really want to get the extra 1%, I put on another piece of light armor. I'm at 50% crit chance. Now you know how to read your critical chance. Now you know how to increase it. The last thing I'll discuss is your critical resistance. This is very simple. Look at your crit damage. That right there is just regular percentage. You also have a base 50. So to understand how crit damage works is you have a base 50, and if you read what it says over here, your critical hits to do 50% increased damage and can be made more powerful with these additional bonuses. These additional bonuses is the number you see on your advanced stat. The fit right now for me is 53%. So that means I'm actually sitting at 103% critical damage. All you need to know is from here that this is an additive and subtractive system, the same thing as your penetration resistance, but is a lot more effective in actually giving you damage mitigation. So all you need to do is this. You need to figure out what is your crit resistance. You need to know the base of the number. It's super easy. Go down to your skills, come all the way over here to Assault, go to Warhorn, go to Sturdy Warhorn. Sturdy Warhorn gives you your base crit resistance, because everybody starts off with 1,320. It gives you your base crit resistance, so it doubles your crit resistance. This is important to know because it actually tells you how much you're getting from crit resistance. You're getting 20%. That means that your base crit resistance is 20%, meaning that if you take away half of that, you're getting 660. That means that you're at 10%. Just the same thing that we did before when we figured out how to get the 10% to 1%. You just minus 0. Now you're sitting at 66% crit resistance. Well, 66 crit, for every 66 crit resistance rating that you have, you're getting 1% crit mitigation. That means that whenever someone hits you, you're going to reduce that crit damage by 1% per 66. That's super easy. Now, this is important to know because for my personal crit resistance, I'm at 2,851. So all you gotta do is grab that number right there and then divide it by 61. Currently, I'm sitting at 43% crit resistance. So when you have 2,800, you're going to be, well, 2,851. You're at 43% crit resistance. I also have Rallying Cry, which we can just look at the number, add it onto my crit resistance, and it will tell you how much crit resistance I have. So that's 1,592. Cool. So if I add an additional 1,592 crit resistance, I can even just tell you how much crit resistance you're getting from this too. When we divide it by 66, that's 24%. So that's 24 being added on top of my initial 43. That's going to leave me at 67% crit resistance. And 67% crit resistance in this game, the rating is a pretty funny number. It is 4,444. So it's 4 for 4. 4 across the lane. Cool, right? Now you know how to read crit resistance, and because you know how to read crit resistance, you also know how much mitigation if I was to hit myself with, how much I mitigate. If I'm at 103 and I'm doing nothing to increase or to decrease my critical damage currently, I am going to negate my initial 50% additional damage that I'm putting on him and losing another 10% roughly, right? That's pretty significant because that means that for a threshold, just to have your base 50% crit damage, you need to have 67% critical damage just to keep your base 50. And that's important for people that are not capable of hitting non-crits for 10Ks. If you cannot non-crit hit somebody for 7, 8, 9Ks, that means that when you do start critting, you're going to be stuck into 7, 8, 9Ks. You might be able to push it into a 10K, but typically you won't be able to, right? So say it was a 10K hit, right, non-crit. Hit you for a 10K, and I had that base 50%, I'm doing 15K. Versus, say I could not do that. Say I only hit you for a 5K, and then I critted. All I'm doing is taking that 5K, you cut it in half, that's a 2,500. That's 50%. That's what you're doing. You're taking your base number, here's 50% of that. That's how you rough it out. So instead of it being a 5K, it would have been a 7.5. You can eat a 7.5 all day. You can work with 7.5s. You can't eat 15Ks every day. You can't eat 20Ks every day, right? So that's why it's very important to have a lot of crit resistance in PvP, because it's literally just an additive subtractive game, and when you have a significant amount, you can reduce a lot of crit resistance, well, a lot of crit damage very, very quickly. Just by doing that, like just for what I have on currently, I'm at 43%. That means that if you needed to hit me when I'm not buffed and do serious crit damage, you need to have more than 43% crit. And then also be able to non-crit hit me for a 10K. Which some people say is very possible. But I can also eat 10Ks because I got 37K health to start. And when I'm done, I'm at like 41. So it doesn't really matter. And if you feel like the armor is low, again, I don't have to run Death Dealers. I can run Markin. I can change up my resources. And I can still end up with high resources, high sustain, and then meet the, oh, well, I got 33K resistance. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, because you and I both know that we can still hit somebody really fucking hard if we wanted to, whether or not they had 50K resistances or they had 22K resistances. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. People are going to hit no matter what. Stop worrying about your resistances that much in PvP. Get some other forms of damage mitigation. And yes, this video does not talk about other forms of damage mitigation. It's simply just letting you know how to read these stats. And this is also a little bit geared into the PvP side in an aspect, because outside of really the critical chance and the resistance, you don't have to worry about a lot of pen. You don't have to worry about a lot of crit resistance. Crit resistance doesn't matter at all in PvE. So this is more PvP focused. But at the end of the day, this still shows you how to operate your toon no matter what. Whether or not you're doing PvP or PvE, you now know how to read critical chance, penetration, resistance, and your critical resistance. So with that being said, I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.